Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us here on our YouTube channel for episode number 764. Well, we've got a treat for you today. I have on Michelle Miller, the farm babe herself. She's going to be talking to us about her life's journey, travel, international travel, and agriculture, and the development of her business as an agricultural influencer. Let's get that started for you right now. Michelle, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You bet. I've got a buddy, actually a friend I made when I started my very first agricultural business, and we've stayed friends. He mentored me and told me about the business. He was operating the same thing, and he has bugged me a good 10 or 20 times to interview you and have you on the show. So finally I get to do it.
Awesome. Wait, so now I'm curious who it is. Can you mention? Because now I'm curious.
Yeah, his name is Rod Zier, and he owns a pocket gopher extermination company in Ontario, Oregon.
Interesting.
So he's a fan.
Oregon's one place I have not been, but it's on my bucket list of states I have left to see. So we'll make it out there someday.
Yeah, it's a great state, very diverse. You got rangeland and irrigated agriculture over on the eastern side, and then you've got fisheries and a very wet climate over on the west. It's really a diverse state for sure.
Awesome.
Oh, cool. Well, I got to tell you, I have become a fan since Rod has been bugging me. I've been following you and watching videos and following Facebook and all of that. And I've become a fan, and I was excited that I was looking through your photos to see you and I have something in common. Would you like to know what that is?
Of course.
So you did an interview, obviously, with Dr. Drew Pinsky. And
yep.
I was looking at that picture, and I have stood right in that exact spot in that exact studio. So that is Adam Carolla's studio in Glendale.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really, that's awesome.
I interviewed Adam, and he interviewed me, and we did it in his studio right there in Glendale. So we did that about 2 years ago.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. So what did you guys interview each other about then?
So he had me on his show, his subscription show called Take a Knee. It's a motivational podcast. And so we talked about agriculture. We talked about the FFA because I profile FFA students so frequently, and he talks a lot about the state of public education. So I wanted to say, well, hey, wait a minute. Here is a piece of public education that's working very well. And then I have a past as a police officer. I was a police officer for 15 years, and so we talked about that. It was right after the Parkland, Florida school shooting, so it was topical, and I had been a school resource officer, so we talked a little bit about that as well. So it was like this eclectic interview. Now, interviewing with Adam is, you get a few words out, and then he just runs with a thought. He's pretty amazing like that. So I didn't say a whole lot, but it was fun. And then we turned around, and I interviewed him about being an entrepreneur and just the basic concepts of being an entrepreneur and not, just making your own destiny for my audience, even though he has nothing to do with agriculture.
Yeah, that's awesome. But it is so great to have people like Adam Carolla and Drew Pinsky in our corner because it's, our voices in agriculture are so easily drowned out. And so to have celebrities that give us a voice on a more mainstream city platform is fantastic. Like, I think we just need to do a lot more of that in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I agree. And we're lucky to have those folks. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your journey. So I don't know if there's anyone listening to me who doesn't already know who the Farm Babe is, but if you would, introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So yeah, my name is Michelle Miller, and my Facebook page is Farm Babe. My Twitter, Instagram, social media handles, all that good stuff is The Farm Babe. And I've basically built a business platform to bridge the gap between consumers and farmers. And I guess one of my claim to fame is myth busting. So my boyfriend and I live and work together on his 6th generation farm here in Iowa. And it's a couple thousand acres of corn and soybeans, oats, hay, rye, and we raise beef cattle and sheep. Mm-hmm. But I actually, before I met him and started dating him 7 years ago, I was the biggest city girl. So I actually came from Chicago and Los Angeles and places like that, went to college in California, And, I used to be so misinformed about agriculture. Living in Los Angeles and Chicago, I had seen these movies like Food Inc. And I had a personal trainer that was like, if you want to be healthy and lose weight, you have to go gluten-free. And I had become anti-GMO activist and would only shop at Whole Foods and only eat organic. And so this was what I had been programmed to believe based on all the misinformation I had heard in the city. And so my boyfriend, here he is growing Monsanto GMOs and, using growth hormones and cattle feedlots and all this stuff that I was worried about. And that's really what inspired me to speak up on behalf of agriculture. So it's turned into, a business. I partner up with different brands to raise awareness on what they're doing in their food and farming operations or food companies, and then do public speaking and all sorts of stuff. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
All right. Now, so if you are at this point in time, I don't know. It sounds to me like the transition for you started to happen after you and your boyfriend got together. So how did you two ever get together if he was on the production side of ag and you were on the complete opposite side thinking what he was doing was wrong?
Yeah. So I had been living in Chicago for most of my 20s and kind of got fed up with the city life. I just was kind of over Illinois. Mm-hmm. If anybody has lived in Illinois and left, the feeling when you finally escape Chicago and the incredibly high cost of living and taxes and all the BS that comes with Chicago.
Okay.
I was kind of over that. So I moved to Florida, and I was actually just bartending. I just kind of took this break in my life right about the age of, 30 or so. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to bartend on a white sand beach and travel the world.
Okay.
And so that's what I was doing then. And Doug was visiting his sister who lives down there. And so he would come into my bar from time to time, and that's how we met. And so we started dating long distance. And so it was like I would go back and forth between Iowa and Florida and was just learning about it. And so that's kind of how it started.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Yeah.
And I read about your travel on your website. So every continent, 62 countries. That's pretty phenomenal travel.
Yeah. I'm up to 67 countries now, and then I'm going to Mount Everest next month.
Oh, my goodness.
So a friend of mine and I are doing Mount Everest in Istanbul. I'll be in Qatar. I'll be in Ukraine, Nepal, China, Tibet, and then kind of up through up to Mount Everest. So international travel has always been another huge passion of mine. And so I had made a goal to visit every continent by the time I was 30. And now it's like when I travel now, because I love agriculture so much, I always try to incorporate food and farming because I just love it. I just find it so interesting. I want to know where our food comes from globally. I mean, a lot of people, when they blog about agriculture, they blog about their own farm or maybe small scale farmers market type stuff. But I want to know, where does McDonald's source their coffee? I want to know about international global export trade and ag, on a global scale. So I was just in Ecuador a few weeks ago, and there I got to tour a shrimp farm.
Okay.
And so that was awesome just to learn about, I think people have so many misperceptions about how their food is produced, right? There's so many myths. And so to be able to go and see firsthand, these shrimp are raised this way and their food safety standards are so just through the roof, they're raised with no antibiotics ever in these really clean, protected areas. And so it was kind of neat when you can kind of myth bust and learn about international travel, but also, farming and everything. So I've kind of combined my two passions.
So, for example, the travel that you're talking about, that you're getting ready to embark upon, is that work related? Is it strictly tourism, or is this a combination of the two?
It's a combination. It doesn't usually start out as work related, but I always end up making it work related because I just get there and then I talk to people or I find out if there's local tours or local farm agritourism. And when I went to the shrimp farm in Ecuador, it was just by chance, randomly, we were sitting at a restaurant and started talking to the table next to us. Mm-hmm. And, oh, where are you from? And then they lived in the city that we were going to visit. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're going there. What do you do? And then he's like, oh, we own a shrimp farm. And it's like, what are the odds? You know what I mean? So it's like one of these things. It's like, of all people that I could have met, I just so happened to have met the owner of Ecuador's largest shrimp farm. I mean, it's like a huge commercial operation. And what are the odds that we sat next to the president and then he gave us a tour? I mean, it was just so cool. So it's like, I don't really like to plan when I travel. Like, I just show up and maybe have like a little bit of hotels, but then I just figure it out. And I think it's so much more fun that way when you have like fluid travel plans, you know, to just go with what takes you where. You know what I mean?
No, that's fantastic. Now, do you have a favorite country you visited?
I really like Belize, but mostly because I'm a big water enthusiast. And so Belize is really special to me because the diving and snorkeling is incredible. Like I'm a big shark enthusiast too. And so there you just get to see a ton of sharks, just massive rays. I like diving with really big stuff. So that was cool.
Okay.
But I also really like, you know, Ireland's pretty cool. Australia's great. Bermuda, you know, there's other places that I'm a big fan of, but I don't know. Belize holds a special place in my heart. I don't usually like to go to the same place twice, but I make exceptions for Belize.
Okay, interesting. Now, Doug is farming and then he's raising livestock, so he's obviously not getting to go on all these trips with you.
No, it's really hard to get us both off the farm together. But I told him when we first started dating, I said, I have one rule. If you date me, I have one rule. We have to do a minimum of one international trip a year. And so we do. So He went with me to Ecuador and the Galapagos Islands just a few weeks ago. But it's hard. It's really hard to get him off the farm. But in January to go somewhere warm, it's like we just, you know, we deserve that. You know, it's just, it's have to find somebody to cover chores, and it's hard. I used to have my own livestock on the farm. I was always kind of doing my own thing. My farm is Buckingham Palace, is what I started, the sheep farm. But now with Farm Babe has taken off so much that I'm hardly ever home anymore. So I actually ended up selling my sheep to him, and then he bought his own and has really like expanded the flock.
Well, I was seeing that too. I love the name of the Buckingham Palace. But now that I know about your international travel, it makes sense.
Yeah, Buckingham Palace. We treat our livestock like royalty.
Yeah, very well done.
And so, yeah, thanks. And, you know, that's what's so fun about it too, is I don't know what it's like for other people, but in my local Northeast Iowa community at farmers market, I really like my fellow vendors. You know, there's not a lot of people, you hear about this in agriculture where they put down other producers to try to sell a product, right? They say, well, mine's better because it's organic, non-GMO, and gluten-free. And it's like, oh, gluten-free chicken, you don't say. Like, it's just stuff like that. That's just really misleading, you know what I mean? And I like our farmers market because I think it's really fair. I like my customers, you know, they ask questions once in a while, like, are your livestock fed GMOs? And I say, yes, proudly. And I'm able to have these conversations with consumers face to face. And after I debunk some of these myths, or, you know, if they, oh, is it organic? It's like, well, we're not certified, but you know, what does that label mean to you? Or what is it that you're looking for? You know, like, and so you have these conversations, and, I still make the sale. I mean, and that's what's so interesting. It's like, they want to know, I think consumers care more about knowing where it comes from and feeling connected to their farmer more than they care about marketing labels. But I use humor in my marketing. So somebody walks by and they see Buckingham Palace, and then they chuckle. And then they say, and then I say, yeah, I've got two rams. Their names are Prince Harry and Prince William. And then we've got Queen Elizabeth. And so, but then I make people laugh, and then they come over and talk to me. And so, like, I always kind of lead with like a humor marketing angle, as opposed to, you know, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, gluten-free, this, that, and the other, free-range, grass-fed. Like, what other label can we slap on here that? And don't get me wrong, like, for people that use a marketing niche, that's fine and it works. But I just don't, I'm not big on, you know, like misleading claims, which I guess is big in bigger corporations more than it is small local farms. But so not to diss on the people that are doing things differently, just like, yeah, I just take the different marketing angle.
Well, I'm the same as you. I mean, I don't mind. So my goal has always been with this show is to help people farm. I don't care how they farm. I don't care if they're into production agriculture. Right. I don't care if they're into regenerative agriculture. I don't care how they farm. But the one thing I try to always tell people, and I hope they listen, is look, market the great things about what you're doing, but don't run down other people for the way they're doing it.
Exactly. 100%. Yep. And it's funny too when you say the words production and regenerative, because those can be the same thing.
That's true.
And so it's like Doug's earned so many awards for soil and water conservation, you know, Farmer of the Year. We're really, really big into what you might call regenerative, but we're growing thousands of acres of GMOs. Right. So it's funny when you have these conversations, you talk about all the awards. And he's been no-till for over 20 years and does cover crops and soil testing and crop rotation. We're looking into crimping this year. I mean, so there's all these things that people say are like, oh, well, that's organic. And it's like, I mean, we're pretty organic, you know, we just don't have that certification and, you know, we'll use herbicides and the crop protection products that we need, which are not organic, you know? So yeah, I mean, there's not that much difference. We all care about the soil. And I think that's one of the big things that I drive home through my social media outreach is, you know, you don't have to be a small organic farm to do the right thing. You can still be a huge corporate, whatever farm, however you want to label it, even though most farms are still family farms, and they can still do just as great of a job, if not better than so-called organic or regenerative. You know what I mean? So like, what does that even mean sometimes?
So I want to ask you, when you have a belief set like you did about GMOs and Monsanto and this and that, what starts you down the road of changing that thinking, and what is it like to go through that transition?
Well, you know, for me, it was a pretty easy transition, I guess, just because I was starting to fall in love with this farmer, right?
Okay.
And so when I was starting to develop feelings for him and caring and all that stuff, you know, and then it's like, well, I just obviously had a built-in trust because I was dating him. And so when he would tell me like, yeah, we use Monsanto GMOs, like they do great things for farmers. I was a deer in headlights, but it made me think, and it's like, well, I'm going to listen to him. He obviously knows more about this than I do. He's been farming his whole life. So why wouldn't I listen? And so it really, for me, was like a deer in headlights feeling of just, what? You know? And so that was like my initial reaction. But then the more I would learn and the more I would talk to like his parents and neighbors and everybody around me. I mean, I live in a town of 1,000 people in rural Iowa, and I'm surrounded by farmers. And so the more you talk to people, the more, I guess that's where my passion came from, because I was really mad I was lied to. Like, I spent thousands of dollars on groceries that I probably didn't need to. So for me, it really pissed me off because I didn't realize how much I had been lied to as a consumer in a city. And so I hope that food companies and stuff are going to start to take note of that lying to people doesn't win anybody over. Like, it can help you boost sales temporarily, but once people realize that they've been duped, it's on, you know? And I feel like a lot of people in my space are in the same shoes, like have the same shoes, you know what I mean? Like, they feel the same way. So there's that. But yeah, I mean, I've changed people's minds over the years a lot. I mean, I just remember coming from the city, like my Facebook news feed of my personal friends. It's like I'd be scrolling and it was like so many of my friends were sharing misinformation. And now 5 years later, it's like I don't see any misinformation in my news feed anymore. And it just took time, very polite, tipping away in my friends' comment sections on social media to be like, but you have to find. Somebody can write the stupidest thing in the world. You would want to bang your head against the wall at how much everything is wrong, but find one part of their comment that you can agree on and build on that. Like, for example, I totally understand, you know, I like to buy local too. I love to support local farms. But I do feel that a lot of the claims against pesticides or GMOs are a little overblown. And, here's why. And then you can like share an article and be like, I hope that helps. And you kind of wrap it up with like, I hope that helps. Like, if you have any questions, let me know. Like, this is a great resource. Like, you can tag a page or something that you just think will help people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's really important to always be kind and answer their questions in a way that everybody can understand, and just remember to have empathy, because I see that all too often where people are just jerks in the comment section.
Sure.
And it's like, really? You're wasting your time. Nobody's going to listen to you if you're being a jerk. Like, you have to put yourself in their shoes. They're not stupid or helpless. You just have to be like, okay, like, how would I feel if I lived in Chicago and didn't get to talk to a farmer,
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. Well, and people tend to lose their minds on social media, or they just take all filters and throw them away, and they say unbelievable things to each other. It's just stuff that would never be said face to face.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I want to ask you, so you talked about earlier about partnering with brands. So what do you do to help brands with their messaging, and what does a partnership with a brand mean for you and your business?
Oh, gosh, there's so many different ways you can go. I usually just get approached by brands. They like what I'm doing, or see that I have a big following. I'm up to 130,000 social media followers now, and I reach about 3 million people a month. And so once you kind of get to a following like that, they want to tap into that. Okay. And so I can do just a one post, or I can do, I've had some partnerships that last years. Mm-hmm. And so it just depends upon what they want. There's a really great website I think more people need to be aware of. It's called socialbluebook.com. Okay. And I hear about this from influencers all the time, where they're just starting off and they don't know what they're worth. And Social Blue Book is like the Kelly Blue Book of finding out what you're worth. So you go on there and you put in all your statistics, you link all your social media, and it tells you your engagement rate. It tells you how much you're worth. Like, here's what you should charge per post. And it has been wonderful. So from there, I can say, well, you do a media kit. And from there you say, well, this is what I would charge for one post, but I work out deals for longer term partnerships. So you say, well, if you do a monthly fee, you can charge X amount per month for X amount of posts. And then so you kind of go from there. So I have several partnerships that I do that are long-term. And then other people just want to do like one or two. And so it always just kind of varies, but it's a really helpful tool, that website.
And are folks coming to you, or are you going out and soliciting business from them?
Like 95% of the time they're coming to me.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now, I also do farm tours as well. Mm-hmm. So this I love. But a lot of times, like when you're first getting started blogging or whatnot, brands just pay for your airfare and your travel expenses to come out, and then you can blog about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But I developed such a following that I actually start to charge for those now. And because that's really become my niche, right? So different bloggers have different niches, but mine is really, global agriculture. Where does your food come from? And let's bust some myths. Like, what are the biggest misperceptions about what you do? And let's talk about it. And so, for example, I did a partnership with the Idaho Potato Commission this past fall. And I say, well, I charge like a flat fee plus travel expenses, but then I'm just like, I don't put a number on posts because it's whatever inspires me. So it's like, you do videos and pictures and posts, and you're creating content, and you're doing stories and Instagram, and you're answering questions. And I mean, it takes a lot of time, and you're engaging with your fans. And so it's like, it takes a lot of time to do all that. And back in the day, the way to advertise was yellow page ads or billboards or whatever, and commercials. Now, I mean, you can do that at a fraction of the cost by working with influencers. You think about the millions of dollars that food companies or brands will spend in advertising, but what if you can work with influencers? And, it's like, through that partnership, I mean, we reached 500,000 people on my social media alone. Mm-hmm. And so if you're reaching 500,000 people, I mean, that's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're engaging with them and answering questions, and you're almost like a third party, it's just an extension of it. But I have that knowledge now for life. And if I'm going to a conference or I'm going to talking with people in a city, I can say, yeah, here's some really cool, interesting facts about potatoes and how they're stored and how they're harvested. And how do you have potatoes year round? I mean, stuff like that people want to know, that they think's really interesting. They just don't always get a chance to learn about it. So that's really become a huge passion of mine, is to tell that story.
So when you have a client like the Idaho Potato Commission, are they wanting you to dispel falsehoods about potatoes, or are they wanting you to promote Idaho potatoes, so when people go to the store, they're selecting Idaho potatoes over, say, North Dakota potatoes or something like that?
Sure. So, I mean, I think they generally just want people to understand, like promote Idaho potatoes. But when I have conversations with people, I say, well, here's kind of what I'm about. Is like, so I know that that's my niche. I know that myth busting is just what I'm really passionate about. Like when I hear people say, oh, I cannot eat conventional potatoes because they are just drenched in pesticides. Like that argument drives me bonkers. Like, because I used to believe it. So this is myth busting is what I like, just personally. So I say, yeah, I'm going to talk about where they come from and how they're grown. I'm going to promote Idaho potatoes. But, you know, when people say, like, what are some of the biggest myths? And so they talk about what their concerns are. Well, people think that if there's a black spot on a potato, it's bad and you shouldn't eat it. Or they have questions about green spots. You know, is it still okay to eat this? So I take what questions they get and combine that with what questions I get. And, you know, then it's like I get to talk to the growers and say, you know, what kind of pesticides do you use? Like, why? How often are you spraying? At what rate? Like, is this harmful? Does it end up in our potatoes? And I ask those tough questions. I have zero problems telling people to their face, like, here's what pesticide is used, this is the dose, and here's why, and here's how. And by providing that transparency, all of a sudden you have people going from, oh my God, they're drenched in chemicals, to saying, but they're used at a certain time and they're tested and it's a really, really minimal dose. And like, it's not going to end up in your food and you're going to wash your potato anyway. So it's really not that scary. So that's really just the angle that I enjoy taking, you know?
Now, when did Michelle Miller become the Farm Babe?
I started my Facebook page 5.5 years ago now.
Okay.
And then I started doing like public speaking and turned it into a full-fledged business probably like 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So it wasn't really much of a business. It started off as a hobby and didn't really become a business until maybe 1.5 years, 2 years in, where I was able to quit my other job, you know. When I first moved to Iowa and I needed a job, I actually became a blackjack dealer at the casino.
Okay.
So I was like the farm babe and farming by day and then like dealing cards by night.
Okay.
That was fun.
So,
but after a while, it's like, okay, this is taken off and I'm traveling and I no longer need this other job. And frankly, I don't really have a lot of time to farm anymore either. I mean, I still do. I still help out as much as I can when I'm home, but I can't devote the time to it like I used to be able to because I do travel so much.
So
for mostly for business.
So when you started the Farm Babe page, was there a business intention there, or were you just starting a page so you could communicate with more people or share your message that way?
Oh, I never in a million years thought it would turn into a business.
Okay.
I literally just wanted to start a blog on like what was happening on our farm. I literally thought it was just going to be a hobby. I was like, oh, it's not really going to go anywhere. Like maybe I'll get 1,000 followers. And this is just something fun for me to do because I enjoy it. And yeah, everybody always says, do what you love and the money will follow and do what you love. And it's like, well, in this case, it's pretty true. Like, it's just my passion and what I love to do. You know, whether I'm making $10 or 10 million, it doesn't matter. It's just like, I love what I do. And I think that's the most important part of it all.
So today, when people ask you and they say, okay, I want to be an influencer in agriculture in the same way that you've done, or maybe in my own way, but you know, in the same vein, what do you tell them in terms of, as you look back, even though you didn't start it with a business purpose to begin with, you look at what you did and you look at how it grew your following, and all of a sudden it gave you this capital, this value for other companies and other brands. What do you tell people? How should they go about doing it?
Well, I think relationships are really important. Like, I know I couldn't have built such a strong following if I didn't build a network of online friends and people that had the same goals as me. So there are other agriculture bloggers. There's other people in the science-based science and skepticism community that that it's like I see their posts and I like them and I share them. And I found other people that inspired me. And so I would share their stuff and then it would give them a boost in fans. And then they'd share my stuff and it would get me a boost in fans. And we would share each other's stuff and help out in each other's comment sections. And so that's really kind of how it started, was building those relationships. So, and these have become really great friends to this day. They started off as like internet friends, and then you meet them in person. Like, for example, the Credible Hulk. The Credible Hulk is now a personal friend of mine who I've met in person, but he's somebody that I started off with like, wow, this guy's really smart. Like, I love his page. And he does really great work in the science and skeptics community. But what does that do? It networks outside of agriculture. He's not a farmer. I mean, he's a college student in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who just really loves science. And so what happens when you end up becoming their go-to source for questions about GMOs or chemicals or whatever, and you're helping project their message and they're helping project yours. And so that's probably one of the best ways I can say is to build relationships is important. But also, I think humor is really important. Being yourself, explaining things in ways that everybody can understand. Just have fun. I mean, memes are always do really well. So humor, memes, just tell stories in a fun and interesting way that gets people to laugh or cry or whatever. And that's how you go viral. And so, just kind of vary that content.
So now that you've grown to the size you're at, you're doing all this travel, you've got big brands that are bringing you out to their state, like Idaho, and you're representing them, and you're doing all of this. Is it still just you, or do you now have a staff that you're using to help you manage some of the everyday logistical type of things?
It's just me, which is kind of crazy because I do kind of want to hire somebody. I've tried here and there, but it's hard. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing I struggle with is like giving up a piece of my baby. You know, it's hard. And so when I have brought somebody on to help, it's been like a friend, like a lifelong friend, and then they get busy, and they've got a family and other stuff to do, and then it's like they just don't understand agriculture. Maybe nobody does it like you can. When it's your own business, it's just like, it's really hard. So I struggle with that. There is a gal here in my community that I'm thinking of working with. She wants to help manage my LinkedIn and my Instagram and do some promotional posts and videos that way. And so I'm debating on doing that. And I probably will, but I'm traveling so much. And then when I'm finally home, I've got so much to do. Like today is just conference calls all day. Okay. And so I've got to do, and stuff like this is just, that's my day all day, because that's the way I planned it. But, it's hard. Yeah. I do.
No, I understand, and I'm in the same boat where I'm at, and there's a ton of, as you get bigger and more people recognize you, all of a sudden there's all these new things that come up that suck up your time, and that becomes a real challenge. And and I'm like you. I've hired assistants a couple times, and I've tried to do that, and I've tried to not outsource, but delegate some of the tasks that I need done to make this all flow and make it all right. And I'm on my own again. I'm all by myself, and I don't know if that's because
here.
Yeah, maybe I'm hard. I might be hard to work with. I don't know, but it's one of those things. Yeah. In my mind, it's so clear, but trying to get somebody else to kind of take it on, it's difficult to explain sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things that's like I don't think I'm like hard to work with or anything like that, but I don't. But it's like, I know I'm so busy that it's like, God, I don't even have time to train somebody, you know? Yeah. And I said that to Doug the other day. I said, God, I kind of miss the days where, when I was first starting out and I just had so much time that I could just sit and argue with people on the internet. Like, I kind of miss those days. Now it's like I chime in on the comment section when I can, but now it's like, oh gosh, I just don't have the time to devote like I used to. And half the time I don't even read all the comments, or I check them like once a week. So it's like I try to keep up, but you have to think about your priorities, and your priority is your business, and answering all the comments in the comment section isn't helping me plan my next speech, and right. Public speaking is a huge part of what I do. And that's really where my focus has to be. Because it's a lot of work. I mean, I'm working on a speech now that I'm writing from scratch, and it takes a long time to put it together and write it and practice it and make sure you're really confident and ready to go. It's not something you can just put together, in a day. It takes a long time for me anyway, because I really try to do a great job and I take it very seriously. So yeah, I mean, you have to just remember those priorities.
Now, when you're building an influencer type business like what you have, do you find it helpful to every now and then get offline and actually have a phone call with somebody, or a handshake, or a face-to-face meeting?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, I love that. Whenever possible, I try to do stuff face-to-face as often as I can. Like you said, if you're ever in Idaho, I mean, like, I would love to just be sitting down with you in person. Yeah. It's so much better. And your emails of like, you need to talk to my daughter. She's always wanting to go to the Galapagos, like stuff like that. It's like, I want to see your farm. I want to meet your daughter. Like, I want to talk to you guys in person. Like, that's so much better. Unfortunately, I just don't have Idaho in my calendar anytime soon. So, but when I can, I try. I gave a talk in Western New York last week or 2 weeks ago. And when I was there is an Instagram influencer I've been following for years who's a dairy farmer. Her name is Nikki Boxler on Instagram. And so I was telling Nikki, I said, hey, isn't your farm in Western New York? And I was like, I'm going to be there. I want to come see your farm. And she's like, yes, you totally should. And she's got an anaerobic digester on their farm too. And so one of my biggest social media partnerships right now is with Brightmark Energy, who does anaerobic digesters on these larger dairy and pig farms. And so they use Brightmark Energy's anaerobic digester. So I was like, oh my gosh, this would be great, because I can see your farm and meet you, but also I can see Brightmark Energy's technology in person, which was one of my partners. So it was a win-win. I got to meet some great people, and then got some content for my column. I mean, I'm a columnist too. So got to some blog stuff, some column work, some posts, and met some great people and gained a ton of knowledge and education in the process. So it's just great all around. So if it works in my schedule, it's so much better.
Yeah. Well, I host a show for Pioneer called the Corn Revolution Podcast. So if I get back out to Johnston, are you close to Johnston in Des Moines?
I'm not. I'm about 10 minutes outside of Wisconsin, actually. So okay. I'm pretty far from there. If you're in Wisconsin, or even Minneapolis is closer for me.
Okay.
But, which is funny. Everybody's like, you're in Iowa. Are you by Des Moines? I'm like, not at all.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, if you'd want to take a road trip on out, I'd love to give you a tour of the farm, or try to meet up with you somewhere at some point if it works. I always try.
Yeah. Well, you sound very busy, so I can respect that. But if I find myself out there, we'll do it. So I want to ask you about this influencer business, especially in agriculture. Is this going to go on forever? Are we still on the front end of this, or has this peaked? I mean, talk to folks about this if they're considering trying to become an agricultural influencer. Where are we at in this business?
Oh, honey, we are just getting started. We are just getting started. This is the future. This is the way of communication. Actually, I'm giving a talk on this at the Michigan Farm Bureau this week. And I've got some funny memes up there where it's like things I use the phone book for. And then it's like a pie chart, and it's like killing spiders, like stuff like that, because it's like advertising. This is an extension of advertising. And traditionally, you'd put up a billboard or do a commercial or whatever, but you have no idea how many people you're reaching. You have no idea how many minds you're changing. You have no idea how to track that. as opposed to when you do it through social media. I provide insights to my whoever I'm working with through my partnerships. That like I do monthly reviews. So it's like, here's how many people we reached. Here's how many people clicked on your website. Here's how many people bought your product. Here's and whatever that situation is. So you have tangible results of what you're doing and why and how, and it's at a fraction of the cost as opposed to, billboards and commercials and stuff. I mean, that stuff really adds up.
Yeah.
So it's really a win-win for everybody. And you're building it through a trusted network community. Like, they know that by working with me, I have, loyal followers. It's not just like plastering a billboard up there and people are driving and not paying attention, or you can't target your demographic. Whereas, with some of my partnerships, it's like, I know that they only want to target within 100-mile radius of Des Moines because their thing is very specific. So, I mean, with social media, you can do that. You can target the exact demographic, the exact audience, and it's so much more specific to exactly what you need. And it's amazing, and it's really the future of it all.
Very cool. Well, this is exciting. It's an exciting world to be part of. And, I got my degree in college in ag. I left ag. I became a police officer for 15 years, and then came back to ag. And I was trying to figure out where am I going to fit? How am I going to work in ag full time? And then this opportunity kind of opened up to me to podcast and be an influencer and to do these types of things. And man, what a great way to create my off-farm income and for other people to do so, just talking about what they love. It's really cool.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what it's about too, is finding your niche, finding what works for you and what you really enjoy. And like, people tell me all the time, you need to get a podcast. And I'm like, like maybe someday, but somebody would have to pay me a lot of money to do it, because I know that like video and podcasting and stuff like that, I don't enjoy that as much as I enjoy writing and speaking,
Yeah. So
people have to do what they enjoy. Like, you look at somebody like you or the Shark Farmer, I mean, he's so funny and witty and stuff like that. And it's like, if that works for him and he takes a more edgy angle, like, good on him, know?
I agree.
And then you got somebody like Minnesota Millennial Farmer. I think he's got like 500,000 YouTube subscribers now. And it's like, good for him. But that's what he likes. His niche is equipment and YouTube. And, my niche is myth busting and public speaking. And, you're probably not going to see me do equipment YouTube videos. Like, that's just not really what I enjoy.
Right.
So, you've got to find what is it that you really like, and you can do it, and you can make a business of it, and it's really cool.
Yeah, I agree completely.
So how all did you get started then? I mean, if it's all right, can I interview you?
Oh, I'd love that. I'd love that.
If I could ask you a couple questions, I'd like to know. I mean, as long as this doesn't bore your listeners if they already know your story. But how did you get involved in it? From going from a police officer too. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I got that ag degree in Montana at Montana State. And all my listeners are rolling their eyes because I bring up Montana State as much as I possibly can on my show. But I got my degree, and I did a couple internships. I worked on a bunch of ranches. I sold ag chemicals. I worked in the fertilizer industry. And when I graduated, I just could not find my home, what I wanted to do in ag, and I didn't have a farm to go back to. And so I had another interest that was law enforcement, so I decided to try it out, and I wound up doing it for 15 years. And after about 10 years, I kind of started burning out on it a little bit and started thinking I'd like to go back to ag. And so my wife and I bought our farm just outside of Boise, and we started developing that. And I started an agricultural business, like I mentioned at the top of the show, exterminating pocket gophers, which are a big problem out here for us, and alfalfa and things like that. And that business grew, and it grew so fast that I needed to pick between my law enforcement career and my side business, and I picked the side business, and I left my law enforcement career. And all of a sudden, it felt like a snap of the fingers, but it wasn't. We had our own farm, and I was completely self-employed, and I was spending all my time on my farm or working with farmers and working in agriculture. And for me, that was just a huge lifestyle change moment, whatever you want to call it, that at one point in time when I was unhappy in my work, I would not even allow myself to dream about this day because I didn't think it was possible. And when it finally happened for me, I was so happy, so inspired, I decided to start a podcast to try and teach people how I'd made it work. And
oh, cool.
yeah, and it's just snowballed over time. And it's turned, and then eventually my podcast grew to the point where like I mentioned, I host a show for Pioneer. I do custom podcasting. I host shows for other companies, and that grew to the point where all of a sudden I was too busy to do both the broadcasting business, the podcasting business I developed, and continue with the gopher business. And so I ended up selling the gopher extermination business to my employee who was doing all the extermination for me, which was great for he and his wife. And then I was able to focus on this full time. And so now this is what I do full time in addition to running our small farm here in Idaho. So it's been great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's been great.
What a great story. It's it's so fun when you have different career paths and like your life just changes and you just never know. So how has your wife adjusted? Does she like this life better, or what about when you were a police officer? Was that lifestyle easier from the perspective of family?
I don't know.
The
lifestyle now is definitely easier from the perspective of family. So since my daughter turned 6, she's 13 now, so I don't do this anymore because she would not want me to. But until she told me to stop, I put her on the bus and was there when she got off the bus every day, which is really cool. And she's getting off the bus on a farm. She's being raised the way my wife and I were raised. So so that was a big deal for us. And then I have a lot more free time now. I'm very busy. I work more hours than I ever did before, but that's fine because I really enjoy it. And I know you understand that as well, but
100%.
But the flexibility, I can be there for whatever I want to be there for family wise. And so the lifestyle, I think, is better now. Or we can, like we went to Hawaii a couple years ago, and I just took my computer with me. And so even if I was busy, I could do some work while I was there, but I still had time with the family. And we got to go to Hawaii, which was cool. So, I think the lifestyle's better. There are occasions where my wife and my daughter miss me being a police officer, but I think it's only because it was interesting. To have somebody in the family who is a police officer and in the know and doing things that nobody else does. But other than that, I think the life has definitely improved.
Oh, good. That's awesome. Yeah, you never know. You never know where life may lead with its twists and turns.
Yeah.
I started off in college. I started off as a clarinet performance major, and then I changed my major and worked in the fashion industry. And so I worked as a personal shopper, worked on movie sets, wardrobe stylist, worked backstage at fashion shows. Fashion was my life. I worked for Gucci in Beverly Hills on Rodeo Drive. So in my early 20s, I was just submerged in fashion.
Yeah.
And now I'm 37. And so you look 15 years later, my life is a complete 180. Complete opposite of what I used to be, but I wouldn't change it for the world. And I think that's what you always get from agriculture, right? Is farmers are the best people. Everybody loves farmers, and it's so true. And I wouldn't change this lifestyle for anything. Living in a small town on a farm to me is just the best thing ever. And so, yeah, people are always like, do you miss the city? I'm like, nope. I don't miss the traffic. I don't miss the cost of living. I don't miss the parking and tickets and annoying people and crowds. And I'm just, no thanks. Cornfield any day.
Well, in the United States, you do not get much further from Rodeo Drive than Northern Iowa.
Yeah, totally. And the cost of living.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh.
I know you've got a lot to do today, and I could go down about 1,000 rabbit holes with you. You bring up cost of living. I just did an episode a while back about how we're so lucky in ag that we value living in rural areas, because when it comes to things like retirement, we can go somewhere and be very happy with where we're at, and it's not going to cost us an arm and a leg. It's just I don't know. There's a lot about this lifestyle
Right.
that I really like, and I think we're really lucky if we value, the folks in this audience and your audience who value these things are very lucky in that respect that they've got those values, because it makes life, in my opinion, makes life more rewarding, and it makes it a little bit easier in a lot of ways.
Yeah, 100%. I actually gave a talk in Ontario, Canada last week, and I went to Toronto, and I learned that the cost of living there is so ridiculously high. It's like more expensive than San Francisco.
Wow.
People pay $1 million an acre for land in Toronto. Like, isn't that insane?
Like for a lot to build a house on?
For like an acre. Like,
Wow.
that's how expensive it is. Like, people are paying like I think it's like $4,000, something like that, $4,000 or $5,000 for like a studio or a one bedroom in Toronto. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, thank you. It's just insane. Even like the farmland up there is like $25,000 an acre in like northern rural Ontario. It's like twice as much as it is here. It's just crazy. And granted, that's Canadian dollars, so I mean, 25,000 Canadian is like $1.50 US. But just kidding. I'm just kidding. But yeah, it's really expensive, and I'm like, no, thank you. I have no desire to live in an area that's that expensive again. No way.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I did not realize that about Canada. I would have never, ever said that if somebody posed that question to me.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Well, Michelle, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure to speak with you. I've really enjoyed getting to know you and to be, kind of do a mini interview with you. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been great. Appreciate our time together in the chat.
Well, thank you for being here, everybody. Thank you so much to Michelle Miller for coming on and sharing her story with us. And as always, enjoy your journey to the ultimate lifestyle business, agriculture.